dealing with some good concerns, comparing some things from the Old Testament to the New Testament as we progress through the book of Exodus. Also, we've got some readers tonight. They don't know they're going to be readers. We've got a big portion of scriptures, so we're just going to be kind of flowing through it. On last time we got to this section, materials of the tabernacle. I'll be honest, when I started reading the Bible as a little kid, I had a little Good News Bible. And when I got to Exodus, these parts, I just kind of skipped it. You know, I just figured, this is just, why do I need to know these things? And I remember just kind of getting through it really, really quick. And some of you may not want to say it, you just kind of skipped it too. But these are important. And I kind of questioned, like, God, why you put this in there? You could have concised this Bible out and just kind of really summarized it. But everything that's in this book is important. And as many times I've gone through it, I'm always finding something else. I'm always getting a better understanding. So I'm going to ask Sarah. She's ready to read today. We're going to jump into this section, Exodus 38, 24 through 31. If you could read that, please.
All the gold that was used in all the work of Moses, that is the gold of the offering, was 29,730 shekels, according to the shekel of the sanctuary. And the silver for those according to the congregation was 100 pounds, or 1,775 shekels, according to the shekel of the sanctuary. A becca for each man, there was a half shekel, according to the shekel of the sanctuary. Everyone including in the number from the 20 years old and above, 603,550 men. And from the 100 pounds of silver were cast the sockets of the sanctuary, and the bases of the veil, 100 sockets from the 100 pounds, 1 pound for each socket. Then from the 1,775 shekels, he made hooks for the pillars, overlaid their capitals, and made bands for them. The offering of bronze was 70 pounds, and 2,400 shekels. And with it he made the sockets for the door of the tabernacle of meeting, the bronze altar, the bronze grating for it, and all the utensils for the altar, the sockets for the court all around, the bases for the court gate, all the pegs for the tabernacle, and all the pegs for the court all around.
Now remember last time I said we're actually building it now with the Israelites. And as you go through that, you're like, man, what does that all mean? Why put all of those things, all those details? Because everything that God says, as we talked about before, is important. The details are important. When you're trying to get somewhere and somebody tells you to go left and you go right, you're lost. All right? The details are so important. My communication, my son, he's not here so I can pick on him, Philip. Sometimes I have a hard time communicating. He's more artistic, comes from the left side or the other side of the brain than me. And so something that's so simple to me in directions is not as simple to him. For instance, these details are important. Last night, early in the morning, my son calls me. It's about 3 a.m. and says, Dad, what's up, son? I got a flat tire. Oh, okay. So how did it happen? Well, I kind of rolled up against the curb and, okay, is there a spare? I don't know. Check and see if there's a spare. Are there tools with it? Yes. So do you want me to get out of my bed and come help you? Yes. So before I said, son, check the spare and make sure there's air in the spare. All right, because I don't know what's going to happen. Thank God I got up and God spoke to my heart, take your air compressor and take your jack. So I get there with my jack, pull it out. We get the spare out, and guess what? The spare was flat. I said, son, didn't I tell you to check the air in the spare? Yeah, Daddy, I looked at it and it looked like it had air in it. Details are important, but thank God for His grace. We're able to pump up that spare because God spoke to my heart about the air compressor. Take the air compressor. In communication, God knows what we need. The details are so important. So notice here, it's talking about the gold. The amount of gold listed here is figured as 29 talents, 730 shekels, or about 40,940 ounces of troy weight. At $500 per ounce, that would translate into 20,470,000, and an enormous sum in that day. The silver, though amounting to only about 141,000 ounces, would be valued at about $7 million, figuring silver at $50 per ounce. But it was one thing to give that much, and quite another matter to transform it into carefully crafted pieces of furniture, sockets, hooks, pillars, etc. So all of these, this material, this gold and silver, was transformed into beautiful furniture for the temple. So let's apply that. Notice as we go into the question, in our present days, how much should be put into an edifice of worship? So we've got the Old Testament. You saw all of that was put there. In your thought, what is God speaking to us now with edifices? What's your thought? I can wait. It's going to be due. I go to bed about 9 o'clock. So, what's your thought? Good question. You ever thought about it? I mean, this is an enormous amount put into the tabernacle of worship to God. So how do we translate that? Because there are many. There's other questions I'm going to do with translating from the Old Testament and New Testament. What should our churches? How much should we put into our churches? Okay. Okay. So it's okay. So we have to recognize what we have. Any others? Your thoughts? What does it mean? I mean, you've seen the cathedrals built. There was a crystal cathedral, millions of dollars. Went bankrupt. The Mormons have it now, I think. But millions and millions. Was that right? I mean, they did. They justified it according to Old Testament. You know, they built a tabernacle under God then. We want to do the same thing. Sarah?
I would say it's different because like this tabernacle was pretty much just for God to stay in. And now that God doesn't just like stay in the church, I don't feel like it needs to be, I mean, it's still important to have like a nice place or whatever, but since God is everywhere, it should be more focused on the people instead of the place.
All right. More focus on the people instead of the place. Where does God dwell now? In the believer. Bianca?
Sarah and I was just joking a minute ago. We said, well, since God dwells in us now, and we are the capital, and we should spend millions of dollars on ourselves.
Oh, wow. But doesn't God take care of us in $1 million way? Bigger
I believe it was a couple of days ago, my wife was talking to one of the daughters. I'm in the back listening. And it was a conversation that I talked to all my children about. One of the daughters saying, Mom, I believe there's some mice in the house. And it's a house probably 15 years old. And she said, there's some mice in the house. Wonder how they got in there. She said, a rat. I call them mice, even because I'm one of them. But anyway, she said, well, you did good shit. She said, your dad and I, the first house we lived in when we married, did not have an outhouse, didn't have a well, had a spring, they put out a spring. So they had to move it to the TV. And she just went on and on and on. Said now, the house we're living in now, to make it short, says we're living in a mansion, so we're millionaires.
Wow.
So I looked at this as a translation of how you can go from what God can do, what He can do with you if you just listen to Him and understand where He brought you, where you was at then, and where you at now.
Yeah.
I think also if you like our body of the temple, just like we want to take care of our body, keep it healthy, keep it going. I think even with what we worship, we also want to take care of it.
Okay. All right.
You know, Because I've been places and I said, well, you know, I've seen people's, you know, the pastor drive his car look better than the church. You know, and that's off balance.
Right, right.
So I think that we also still should mind how we take care of the church.
Okay.
You know, I've seen, you know, candy stuff on the, you know, gum on the floor. I still think we should take care
Right.
of the physical church that we get to come in.
Okay, all right. So be an example, but also realizing that Christ dwells in us. And this is important to be this day and time. There has been so much on the edifice of life. Millions and millions and millions of dollars spent on the edifice, and the people can be missed out on. And I think that's a total missing out on what God meant in the Old Testament, that God now dwells on the inside of us, and that's important. And sometimes when we identify, we think of Ebenezer, it's great, you know, wonderful church, but we've got to remember that we are the church. This is a place where we come to worship.
Right.
Thank God. And I remember, and Mother Winstead brings out an excellent point. I remember being in churches, cushion pews, that wasn't, it was wood. And literally, I grew up in Castleview, at Castleview, Mom, remember, up in Virginia. And you slide the wrong way, you would literally get a splinter. It was just that type of wood. And I remember going to churches, you know, as time went on, and they would get those little things that you put on your porch, them little cushions. You know, they would slide, and you had to be careful with them, because if you moved the wrong way, you'd be in the floor. They like, you got slain in the spirit. No, you just slid out of the pew, because that little thing just kind of slid across the wood. So all of those things, and to be where we are, I think we have so much. And I am so concerned that a lot of times we take for granted what we have, and in that we want more, and we miss out on the mission that we are the body of Christ. We are the body of Christ. Did I get all the hands? All right, look at this next part, because we're going to really dig deep. Making the garments of the priesthood. Someone read that, Exodus 39:1.
Of the blue, purple, and scarlet thread, they made garments of ministry, for ministering in the holy place, and made the holy garments for Aaron, as the Lord had commanded Moses.
All right, we're keeping with this same thought. All right, so we kind of equalize, understand New Testament church with this Old Testament tabernacle, but now they're going into priestly garments. And this is a critical point, I think, within the growth of the church. You'll see more of these priestly garments, especially in certain denominations, and you'll see them dress up in Old Testament garments. The bishops or the apostle will actually look like priests with breastplate. Catholic, you see the ritual Catholics, they are dressed up in these garbs. So I want you to keep you in mind of that. We went through this in more detail in Exodus 28, 1 through 43, but this is a parallel detailed account in that Exodus 28. This is more concise. So the garments are very important. Angela, you can continue on. We want to go through making the ephod 2 through 7, please.
He made the ephod of gold, blue, purple, and scarlet thread in a fine woven linen, and they beat the gold into thin sheets and cut it into threads to work it in with the blue, purple, and scarlet thread and the fine linen into artistic designs. They made shoulder straps for it to couple it together. It was coupled together at its two edges, and the intricately woven band of its ephod that was on it was of the same workmanship, woven of gold, blue, purple, and scarlet thread and a fine woven linen, as the Lord had commanded Moses. And they set onyx stones enclosed in settings of gold. They were engraved as signets are engraved with the name of the sons of Israel. He put them on the shoulders of the ephod as memorial stones for the sons of Israel, and the Lord had commanded Moses.
All right, so beautiful, beautiful garments. We've seen pictures of those, breastplate that the priests would actually have on as they came into that elaborate temple. Look at that commentary. Now we come to the preparation of the priest's garments. We're struck at the outset by the repetition of 4 colors. Some see them as representing the manifold glories of Christ as seen in the 4 Gospels. Look at this one. The first one is what? purple. We see that actually we got some purple chairs. Colors are important. We'll kind of deal with that even more. They stand for something. So purple was what? What is it connected with? Matthew, the king. All right, so when you see purple, you think of royalty. All right, royalty. God had put that really rich, fine colors of purple, and in Matthew's gospel, he actually talks about Christ as the king. And then that second color is what? Scarlet. I grew up in churches. That's predominantly what they had. Red, scarlet. Red floors, red pew. Actually, Ebenezer, this was a scarlet church. When I got here, it was like the wall was about right here, and it was just a little thing, and it was just red. Red and dark. That's what it was, I remember. We just didn't have all this lighting and stuff. So that stood for the scarlet, the blood of Jesus. You know, and many of your church, you grew up, red is a big color, and that scarlet actually goes in line with Mark's gospel. All right, and when you study, these are theological points, but when you study Matthew, you see the kingship of Jesus. When you study Mark, what do you see? You see the suffering servant. All right, if you were in theological school, this would be one of your test items. All right, what does Mark stand for? Scarlet, the suffering servant. You see Christ suffering a lot. So when you see these colors, it should trigger you to something. The suffering of Christ. Now look at this last part. White. So within that temple you see white, which parallels the Gospel of Luke, and that stands for what? The sinless man. See a lot of white. You know, I have white robes, purity. White. Y'all may not know this. It's kind of sarcastic, but did you know there was a time that only brides who were virgins wore white at a wedding? I know it seems crazy to you, I know, but there was a time that only virgins were allowed to wear white garments because they stood for purity. Anybody remember that? Okay, I just want to know. But see how things have changed. So that white stood for purity in that whole process. And look at the next one. We got blue. All right, so we've got all these colors that are in the temple. That blue actually parallels John's gospel, the Son of God who came down from heaven. So that's what that blue, you see, think about heavens, think about God coming from heaven, that whole picture there. The gold threads in the ephod speak of Christ's deity. So we got all that working together. On each strap of the ephod was an onyx stone engraved with the names of 6 of the tribe of Israel. So all of that was embroidered in these beautiful colors, elaborate. All the colors stand for something. God wanted those to stand for something. Looking to the New Testament. Now I got a question. Got these beautiful priestly garments, because I need to know if I need to go get me one. You know, some priests. I got some robes. I don't generally wear them a whole bunch, but I do wear them from time to time when I kind of feel it. Notice the question in your opinion, how important are colors today to the church? How important are colors today to the church? Mama Nita?
I don't think they're important today,
All right.
because people wearing everything, and the colors doesn't matter. I mean, you know, it has to have been brought up. What colors, you know, it doesn't mean anything. People just pick out stuff, just keep picking out, but they don't really know the meaning of it.
Okay.
I think in other countries, some of the colors is really important.
Okay. All right. So diminished in our country, other countries, very important. Ms. Adrian?
Only for certain occasions, a color may be used. They should have, the women would have a tea.
The rainbow tea. Yeah, missionary number 1 and 2. The rainbow tea. Colors, and they would actually focus on those colors. All right, that's good. Any other thoughts? Colors.
Good Friday, we make it go on colors. They can bring the colors up for Good Friday.
All right, Good Friday. So their place in there, but again, we want to focus to what's happening on the inside of us. Christ. And some people think, well, we can just have red pews or whatever. Actually, this was, I know they look pink, but it was kind of supposed to be a kind of a red, scarlet kind of thing going on there. Because we thought about colors. We thought about the colors of the church. We wanted to lighten it up a little bit in that whole process. If you look at our stained glass windows, notice the same colors that we talked about. Those deep colors standing for something. And you'll see that in a lot of the rich paintings of yesteryears that are up at churches and cathedrals. Colors are important, symbols. But I think Mama Anita brings out a great point. Sometimes we don't teach on those colors a lot. And so we have a generation that's lost the appreciation for that. You know, like we talked about with weddings. You know, I don't know, I might get real trouble. I asked the bride, well, are you a virgin? And she goes, no. I was like, well, white ain't for you. You better get you a brown or a beige. I mean, really, you know, and you just think about, man, should you even fight those battles these days? But the appreciation for colors, I think, should come back, but we have to keep it in a balance. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they start out with the purple, the royalty, then they'll change it over to the sinless, pure, the white, and sometimes they'll mingle it together. And all of those are looking to these kingly colors, or the suffering servant. When you go through that actually Passover week, or the week of him suffering, you could put those different colors to symbolize. So good point. Any other? Yes, ma'am.
Good thing you need to start, and you may be doing this, some of you with little girls, letting them know that this is what you want to look towards someday. This is your goal to earn the right to wear this beautiful white dress, even if they're little dolls. I think it's a good thing to start early, let them know that what someday will be a bride in your life, that this is something that you want to, to earn, deserve. I mean, it's something to look forward to, something to it bothers me that there's nothing to look forward to, and that everybody's just wearing it, it doesn't matter. I think it comes from being taught, and even in the church, a lot of them are not taught that this is something that you should, make a goal, aspire to, is someday being able to wear your white dress and present yourself as a bride. So I think that would be a good place to educate about the importance of color and the white it is.
So that's your assignment. Go tell your grandkids, your kids, you just want to make sure you got color 101 and explain the symbolism for these things. I think that's great, getting an understanding of that. Benjamin.
I don't really think that the colors matter that much as long as they're showing appreciation for God. Like the colors, when they use them for like symbolism. So we're not really supposed to focus on the symbols. The symbols are supposed to show us God. So if we're not using the colors, if we're showing our appreciation some other way or using it some other way, then it's still fine.
And that's great. You look at it from all sides. I guess my concern is a lot of times we ain't showing much of anything. I mean, and I think that's the problem. Tradition is tradition. Symbolism is symbolism. But symbolism was to focus on things that we actually do. But when you lose the colors, when you lose that symbolism and then you're not doing it, you have a lost generation that just kind of anything goes. And I think we're coming to that generation. So many people that are unchurched, they just don't know. Many of you were heathens. You were in the club, you were running, drinking. Y'all just made me sick to look at y'all. This is the thing where y'all came from. But y'all were brought up in church, right? Even in the club, you knew certain things. You understood colors. You understood that, whether you did it or not. We have a generation that's being raised, they don't even understand it. They don't even understand why they would come into church and they would see red carpet. Like, why do they have red carpet in here? You see some of the newer churches, non-denominational, you go in there are no colors, like Benjamin said. They're blacks. They're set up like theaters. So you come in, it's just black, and they got spotlights, and lights, camera, action, and smoke. That's what they do now, theater kind of type. I'm not putting that down, but I think colors are important as we go forward. But most importantly, Benjamin brings out how we live in the life. Look at this next part. Hope I got a reader. Bianca, I think she raised her hand. Making the breastplate. Someone, Bianca, 39:8 through 21.
And he made the breastplate, artistically woven like the workmanship of the ephod, gold, blue, purple, and scarlet thread, and a fine woven linen. They made the breastplate square by doubling it. A span was its length, and a span its width when doubled. And they set it in 4 rows of stones. A row with a sardius, a topaz, and an emerald was the first row. The second row a turquoise, a sapphire, and a diamond. The third row a jacinth, and agate, and an amethyst. The fourth row a beryl, an onyx, and a jasper. They were enclosed in settings of gold in their mountains. There were 12 stones according to the names of the sons of Israel, according to their names, engraved like a signet, each one with its own name according to the 12 tribes. And they made chains for the breastplate at the ends, like braided cords of pure gold. They also made 2 settings of gold and 2 gold rings. They put the 2 rings on the 2 ends of the breastplate. And they put the 2 braided chains of gold and the 2 rings on the ends of the breastplate. The 2 ends of the 2 braided chains they fastened in the 2 settings, and put them on the shoulder straps of the ephod in the front. And they made 2 rings of gold and put them on the 2 ends of the breastplate, on the edge of it, which was on the inward side of the ephod. They made 2 other gold rings and put them on the 2 shoulder straps underneath the ephod toward its front, right at the seam above the intricately woven band of the ephod. And they bound the breastplate by means of its rings to the rings of the ephod with a blue cord, so that it would be above the intricately woven band of the ephod, and that the breastplate would not come loose from the ephod, as the Lord had commanded Moses.
All right, so we've gone through all that. All of this is the detail in making this clothing for the priest and those who were attendants within the temple. I'm finding out details are important. My Sarah, she's into seamstress now, and that's her major. I don't know what it is. I always mess it up, so I'm not even going to say it, but she does something with material. And the other day we went, and she had taken pictures of a particular material, and we went to Joann's, and guess what? It was hard to match material on a phone with physical material that was in the place. So we had to go back and actually get the dress and match. Details are important, all right? Fabrics and how they shine and the sheen of it. God put all these details so it would look right. Ben, if you don't mind, can you run back there? I need you to get my African American robe, please. Yeah, like my African, you'll see. My African American robe. It's the white one. You'll see it. It looks like an African should wear. All right. As we look at this, I want you to really think about the beauty, the colors, all of these things that are put there. Joy, do you have a picture of a garment? If you can put it up there while I read this commentary. The breastplate held 12 precious stones. So looking at that, I mean, if I came in here with this on, what would you think? Sunday, I go ahead, get Sarah to hook me up, put it all together and everything, and I come in here at 11 o'clock, because 8 o'clock, it's too early to be trying to get dressed like that. But 11 o'clock, well, I come walking in here, and I'm looking like that. What would you think? Oh, so he bumped his head. What would you, don't you? What does that bring to you when you see that? Angie?
I'd be distracted.
You'll be distracted?
I would. I'd be distracted. I mean, I'd be so focused on what you had on you and why you had it on that I would be distracted. I probably wouldn't get much out of service that day.
All right. Anybody else? It does pull attention. All of those colors. But you're going to have to go help him get the African American robe. He doesn't know where it is. Miss Adrian, what would you think?
My first thought would be, oh, we getting ready to get it on.
Okay.
Getting ready to get deep. And then I would be thinking, I sure hope he's not real hot and all that.
It is. It's a lot of material. All these details. Deacon Melvin.
I would think that you had a special point to get across to us.
Okay, a special point to get across? Cindy?
I would wonder if you had joined the guys that's downtown Greensboro.
Could you explain, please?
You haven't seen them? Look at the guys that stand on the corner downtown Greensboro and string people. They are dressed similar to their robe.
Okay, all right, with all the
All
colors
the
and,
colors and the red and
Okay.
and
all right. And I want you to see, they're pulling a lot from Old Testament scriptures. It is scriptural. They can argue, they say, okay, this is scriptural. But the problem is we have to understand that God was bringing us to another point. All right, beautiful, beautiful. And I think there's a place in time that we can show off of that. But as it comes to the New Testament church, I think it brings out a point. We have to make sure that we don't become the distraction. All right? Because we're always supposed to be pointing to Christ. Very, very important. Even in, the robes. Somebody actually gave me this robe. And, the colors that stick out. I said, this is my African American because you got the Kenta colors. I had to be careful when I'm with all Caucasians. This man. I have to be careful with this. Really, I'm serious. When I had to do a majority Caucasian, I think about these things because I walk in an all Caucasian and I got this robe and they're like, whoa, what is he doing? What is he trying to make a statement? But now we're in such a politically charged society. But the colors, it's really not, we make it because Kenta, we say African colors and strings, but the colors stood for something. And they still stand for something. Mother Man.
I was going to say it would be fine because my family, Native Americans,
so everything kind of goes back. So colors are important, but we have to be careful. Now, here's the big question. Notice as we get to it, the gospel preacher actually talks about the breastplate, 12, high priest. The gospel preacher, Peter Pale, expresses it beautifully. The strength of his shoulders and the love of his heart are thus bearing the names of God's people before the presence of God. So with all this, seeing the garments, look at this question. What are your thoughts on clergy clothing in the New Testament church? What are your thoughts? Yes. Okay. All right. So what are we doing? What is our purpose? What are we trying to glorify God? Or are we trying to glorify ourselves? Good point.
Sometimes it's collars, some of it's like a yoke to me because a lot of them are wearing them, and it seems like some of them, I know personally, are hiding behind them. And I think it has something to do with, I think if you really want to connect with the people and your heart is to relate and to, like I saw one time I was in a project where we were doing something like what they're doing now on the other side of town to help in a cleanup effort. It was a project. And this pastor came with his collar. Everybody else was wearing jeans and work clothes. It was really hot. And I'm like, okay, you know what I'm saying? And so I think, and everywhere you would see, there's certain pastors. So what's the point of that? So I think there again, what is your statement? What are you trying to say? And I think that, it goes back to what's in your heart. Are you a servant or do you want people to look up to you? There again, what is your motive? I think that's
all right. Motives, and again, I do it all. Sometimes I'm in collars. If I do a wedding, I might put a collar on, more official manner. Robes, it just depends on the day. Sometimes I got my clothes are wrinkled after I put on a robe, and you won't see the wrinkles. It just depends. Baptism, we put it on. All of those things, but what is the purpose in that? Yes, ma'am.
When we go back, when y'all were talking about this years, ministers wore robes, and I think this was a sign of they respected that they're not going to get up there and whatever they want, they're not going to be, although most ministers were men back then, they still respected what they wore. And if they wear a robe, where ain't no woman looking at you, your tight pants or whatever, you had on a decent robe and that's what you were standing.
Okay, all right, so to cover up, so instead of drawing attention, maybe to take away attention. Good point.
In Jamaica, this one pastor I was up under, he had, all of his shirts were pastel colors that when we went out during the weekday, and he always had on a necktie, no matter what, necktie and the hard shoes, dress shoes. And so somebody asked him, well, Pastor, you know, it's hot. Why do you put on a necktie every day? He said, well, when you go to work and he said, this is my uniform. And he said, and I'm going to work. I'm going to visit the sick. I'm going to visit my parishioners. He said, so this is my uniform and I wear it every day.
Okay,
So
all
they
right.
looked at it as a uniform.
Some see it as a uniform. Say,
And I think also, it's representative of who you are, what you do, and people automatically, when you see nuns in the airport, you automatically know that's a nun. You know, it's an identification of who I am. Police officers wear certain things, you automatically know that's a police officer, I can't help. But as far as the African American robe, which that's really far from the African attire, it shouldn't matter that you wear that if the people are Asian, if they're whatever they are. If that's the robe that represents what you do, what difference does it make?
good point. Now, I want to bring out, with the high priestess robes, this was what they would wear. They worked in the temple. In order to work in the temple, they would be there. When you see them out, they would have their priestly garments on. I respect those who wear robes to stand. They're shamans. I don't believe in what they believe in, but when you always see them when they're out, they always have their attire on. No matter where they go, Food Line, they got robes on. And my concern is sometimes we have to be careful in the church if we say, okay, this is the attire for a preacher, so that means that it's only attire for the preacher when we're in the building. So do we cease to be a preacher when we leave the building? And that is the concern. So when we lift up the clergy attire, sometimes we're saying it's only really applicable for when we're in this building. And I think some people need to wear their robe all the time to remind them of the calling that's on their lives. All right, so it's, again, we talked about that, not so much the clothing on the outside. I can wear anything. All right, I can wear anything, but it's how am I clothed on the inside. Now, it's a quick thing, man. I put this thing on, and I walk across Greensboro with my bars and stuff. They're like, that's a preacher right there. That's a minister. That's a pastor. Or I put my collar on. It's a quick denotation. That's a preacher. That's a pastor. But you know what? I want my heart to shine more than my clothing. Does that make sense? And so, yeah, all of it, we can use that. But I think when it comes to that picture that we had of all those priestly garments, all of those things, I think that we may be slipping in some as we're trying to put different sections of people together and all this hierarchy and bringing back Old Testament dress. I'm concerned with that because I think it has nothing to do with the colors and the dress, but about the individuals and the pomp and circumstance. So we need to pray for that and just be prayerfully led as we go forward. Deep.
And Pastor, at the time that you have the uniform on, a person can see you from afar.
Good.
At the other times, without the uniform, your actions will speak for you.
Good. So they can go hand in hand. That's good. Sister Women.
Looking back, when we were coming up, it was just a basic black. It was a band, not too thick to follow the heat or whatever, or when walking and traveling, however, before they had to walk, we had ministers, we had first and third Sunday churches, and second and fourth Sunday churches, you know, in different areas where they went to. But it was just a basic black. I mean, you knew the preacher by him, you know, he had on a suit or something, or even if he was working on his phone, he had overalls on, a white shirt or whatever, but you knew he was a minister or a pastor or a preacher or whatever else. It was just basic. But we get into today's time, you gotta have this bling bling this, you gotta have bling bling that. But the first time I saw a minister in the pulpit with something, a white robe on, I thought there was something wrong with it. I mean, you know, you didn't see that.
Right.
In the little country churches, they were always like, they baptized in white. You know, and in the creek, it was on my gold.
Good point. Yes.
What you were saying, you know, sometimes like, probably when they saw you coming with your attire on, it's like,
But, you know, when I went to pick up the children, for the youth, I'm sorry, you know, what's it, the youth young people, they saw the church bus, and they kind of like, there was a man there for the children that I was supposed to pick up, and they kind of like, they saw me, and I was like, hey, Rosie, what is up? And I think just the church bus, you see what I'm saying? The church bus just kind of like, oh, there's better respect for that.
All right, or run away from it. It is. We actually had a debate. I think Deacon Nevin and Deacon Lenny, our van started out just white. And I did. I was like, just leave it white. Let's just pick up because we go to Food Line, other folks, you know, just, and nobody stands out. Like, Pastor, we need something on there. And I knew once you put it, Ebenezer, it stands for something. You know, I'm picking up something, Deacon Roy takes it and picks up somebody from the hotel. You see Ebenezer on there, like, who driving there? And why is it the hotel? Because it stands for something. And so that whole process, we have to make sure that it's not about our robes, but it's about our hearts in the New Testament, and that they're clothed with beauties and colors and intricacies and all that. And that whole thought pattern, why do choir members in the past used to wear robes all the time? Y'all remember that? I remember. Everybody used to wear just plain robes.
Dresses and stuff that you wear, you put on the robe.
Uniformity. So I grew up in a Baptist church, and this was the progression. They started off with just plain robes. Then we got a little bit more money. So we started purchasing bling. And so we used to march in. We used to march into the church. And them robes, it was bling. And so it went from just a simple uniformity, keeping everybody together, to like, bam, we are the choir. And then everybody would have the same bling robe. And then our director was like, I'm the director. I need bling bling. And so his robe had little sashes going on and everything. It was just crazy. And then my dad was like, what about me? So now we had to have a triple bling robe. It was just, that wasn't the purpose. The purpose was literally to point to the colors and the semblance of what God was doing, and to come to the point again to what's in our heart. Very important. I can hear yes.
It wasn't so that what happened first, when the Lord put everything on his people, his ministers, then it became basic. I guess coming on down aisles or whatever, everything was a child birth of black, passed down black, or the Christian, whatever you want to call it, he wore black, baptism black, funeral court black, everything was just one color. It was just, just there. But then, like you said, it looked like we're changing again and trying to go back to dressing like the Lord had his people dressed. And I don't know why they kind of get these down in Jason or whatever. They don't use that song anymore. I mean, that's a song that, it's still around, but they don't use it anymore. So what is it?
It's about our mentality.
It's just a basic black. Everything is black. That's from being born to die.
Right.
Everything in between is black.
Okay.
Well, I think there is a purpose. If I'm going to not go into school, I'm going to just put on jeans and a t-shirt. I don't really think about what I'm wearing. It's in my drawer. I pull it out. I go on. But if I'm going to dress up for, say, a wedding or a dance, a formal event, I'm going to take time with that. I'm going to figure out what I'm going to wear because I want to show my best for whatever that formal event that we're celebrating. But this is Jesus. And I think sometimes in some of the churches that, of course, people my age go to now, everything is so casual. You wear the exact same thing that you would there as you would to a football game, as you would. And I think there comes, it shouldn't be so much about the dress, but when you're thinking about, okay, what am I going to wear? You're purposing in your heart to go to church. You're purposing into your heart, okay, this is my day to put something in front of Jesus Christ. And if he was here with us, like he is all the time, but if he was coming to Ebenezer, people would be dressed to the nines, not just because, they want to look well, but because if the President of the United States is coming, even who likes him or doesn't, you're gonna look your best. If any person who's in charge is coming, you're gonna look your best. And yet we come to Jesus like, hey, here's me in my bathrobe, see ya. It's a respect thing.
And all that's perspective. If I know Jesus gonna come to Ebenezer, I'm gonna find me some sandals. But I think he in the sandals. That's what I think he is in the sandals. I think he's gonna see my sandals. He be like, "Them some nice feet, man." I appreciate that. It's perspective, but our heart. It's about our heart. Deacon Leonard. Good.
But he's praising his car more than the word of God. And this is what I go back and say, look, it's got to be like this in the heart.
Good, good. There was a couple more, and we'll pull it all together. Keith.
Naked, I come into this world and naked I should return. With all of these, not going and trying to change anything that's already in the scripture. But these days and times, I don't see how that the rulers can afford all the clothes. I mean, houses and mansions. I don't see how you can afford it because it's been kept from us.
Right.
Christians, I'm not a color, I'm just talking about Christian, Christ-like. It's been kept from us. But now God is moving while the coin is being flipped. So the strong shall survive and the weak shall perish. But naked, I came in and naked. I don't care if I gain a truckload of gold and silver and whatever. I won't take it with me. So I gotta have Jesus. That's my point.
Good. What's inside? Yes.
I think a lot of it then comes down to culture. Yeah. You know, when you go to African American church, most of we dress up. A suit, the ladies, women with the hats. A lot of it is culture. Doesn't mean it just, even in school, we were back in the day now, when we came up, now I'm going back 100 years. But we dressed up and went to school because our teachers taught us you want to approach education something serious, something, a business-like.
Okay.
The attitude. And so your clothes, what you put on, had an effect on how you felt. So we approached coming to church, God, because he's our king, we wanted to present our best to him.
Good.
That's how that in the African American church.
Gotcha.
That's just the way we approached it.
All
Things
right.
are different now. But it still goes back to what's inside.
What's inside? As we pull all this together, Joy, you had your hand up.
I just want to say, I feel like sometimes we put a lot of emphasis on what people are wearing, when that was never what God was trying to point out in the first place. God knows the contents of your heart, regardless of what you have on, a bathrobe, flip-flops, or, a linen ephod. This was for us. None of the stuff in the temple, everything is God's anyway. It was all a symbol for us. And I think sometimes we can say this is what we should be doing for God. But all honesty, we as Christians, it shouldn't matter what the preacher has on. We know what God looks like. We've heard his voice. And so, if anything, we should be dressing this way for people outside of the church to attract them into us. But once you're here and once you're saved, we should be listening more to what's being said than what's going on anyway. And looking deeper into the heart, none of this should matter.
The heart. The heart. Where you come from?
I've been here.
Yes, sir.
In the beginning, when God created Adam and Eve, they were naked in the garden, and God walked with them. So we get so angry and say, God doesn't want you to wear this, God doesn't want you to wear that. They were naked with God. The only time they started wearing clothes wasn't because he said, oh, I don't want to see that, or oh, that's too much for me. It was because they sinned. The reason why we don't have that is because we can't handle it. We aren't supposed to do that. So we make this big deal about these things, that God wants you to wear these things. God wishes that you could just be like in the beginning and just walk with Him, not have to worry about any of that. That stuff is purely just for us.
So your assignment, I want to keep it in mind. We're going to come back on next time to be able to talk some more. Your assignment is, throw you a hook. In New Testament, scriptures say we are all kings and priests. So what kind of robe will you put on? Not just when you come to Ebenezer, because we represent all the time, right? What kind of robe will you wear? Come on to your feet. Let's close out. Good conversation. I didn't get all those hands. There were some other hands. Come on back on next time. Wow. I want to see some of y'all in some nice robes walking in Food Line.